Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd. Let's just hop in here, make sure everything's working. It's still a little weird to have the 30-second delay pre-recording, so the video doesn't go live until like 30 seconds after I start recording. Um, but on the other hand, I guess that's probably the better way to do things. I still think it is, and it has not really kicked me in the butt yet. Um, well, after what has probably been best described as a bad month uh, of me delaying and finishing Virtue's Last Reward, the nonary game, the second nonary game, I did finish it. At least I think I finished it. I got all the achievements. Honestly, there's just a whole section there that's pretty much an advertisement for the third game in the trilogy, which really it is a trilogy, even though they really call Virtue's Last Reward a sister game to 999 when really it isn't. It is pretty much a direct sequel to 999, but I think maybe the catch here, Portalcraft overlapping, maybe I shouldn't re-roll this. Um, I think the catch here is that Virtue's Last Reward did not sell well. It probably went way over budget in the fact that they tried to have 3D. They made 3D characters and turned the 2D characters from the first game into 3D characters, um, which created just a ton of weirdness when there are definitely times where you go back and see the characters in the past and they are 2D. So the whole thing just kind of makes no sense because it implies that in a few short years, the characters in the nonary universe went from being 2D to 3D models uh, in one generation, as it were, in less than one generation. Time it's the same people. Uh, so yeah, that was a big mistake, and I feel like Virtue's Last Reward in particular just went off the rails, and so maybe Zero Time Dilemma, the third game in the series, tries to rein it back. One thing I will say is that there doesn't seem like there is just a cheesecake character in Zero Time Dilemma like there is in 999 and Virtue's Last Reward. Virtue's Last Reward basically has two cheesecake characters in Clover and Alice. Clover being a young, like maybe 20-year-old girl in a rave outfit with hot pants and a bikini top, and then Alice being this Egyptian woman who's basically topless throughout the entire game, except for the fact that she's wearing this big round like necklace that just barely covers her nipples, and that's it. You get significant cleavage, significant side boob, significant under boob. Her entire hips are showing. She is wearing a skirt, but her it is definitely very low. Um, in the first game, there was one character like that named Lotus, and she was a much more likable and relatable character, but her outfit was also just completely inappropriate and not ever really explained, even when it was directly addressed. And without spoiling a lot of Virtue's Last Reward, which frankly, I think I would be perfectly justified to just spoil it all. There's just a lot. That's weird. Time for the daily bonus again. It happens exactly at, I guess, 2 o'clock Central Time, uh, which might be midnight in Japan for all I know. But yeah, it was really hard to pay attention to anything Alice said or did. Every single conversation with her in the building or in the room really just drew my eyes to it. And at a certain point, I just had to admit, like, I don't know if this is sexism or if this is just just the truth of reality, as it were. But if a woman is, or a man, either one, is dressing like they are on the prowl trying to find a sexual partner, they're dressing scantily clad and lewd, and that they're dressing for attention. I think at a certain point that when you're dressing for sexual attention, you're not going to get uh, any other kind of attention, uh, or you at the very least can't be upset that you're not getting that other attention, because you're just not really playing fair with human beings being human beings at a certain point. The idea that you can wear anything you want, I totally get that, and I totally agree. To a certain extent, like it gets very dangerous, and you definitely have to proceed with caution if you wanted to have a full-on nudist lifestyle and walk nude everywhere you go. At a certain point, there would just be a lot of objection by other people there. But yeah, I don't think nudists really deserve to particularly be upset, though, if they get the occasional side glance also. But yeah, that really became a problem, and the ending was incredibly abrupt after being incredibly drawn out. The last episode was like 5 hours long, and I should have broken it into 2.5 hour things. I kind of knew that it was going to go long because the first game went incredibly long too, but at least the ending in the first game basically wrapped things up. Here it left everything as a question mark, and it's just like, oh, we ran out of content, and that's that. And it sets a very bad precedent for what the third game is even going to be, which doesn't really motivate me to play the third game, even though I've already bought it and I'm already pot committed. There's just a ton of red herrings, a ton of things, ton of parts that get integrated into the story, much like 999, where it feels like a lot of things should have been red herrings, and then they turn out that no, actually they aren't red herrings so much as they are part of the story, some in some small way. But yeah, I'm done with it, thank goodness. I desperately need to upload videos. I desperately need to schedule videos. I also am planning to probably not work myself to death too much over the next few days, being Christmas and the New Year's and all of that. I don't think that there's a real reason to do a special end of the year live stream or anything like that. This is definitely not the year. Here, I'm gonna move for a second. I'm already in pain after sitting for 5 hours. So I probably want to just rush through this. The only other part of the accountability section I really have to talk about is I am slowly making progress with Docker containers and servers. Again, I'm slowly making progress and moving on. I abandoned the FTPS server. It just was not working. Let's see, inherently, I think there is an issue, certainly, with all software, whether it's Linux software, Macintosh software, or Windows software, those would be the three major types of software out there. There's an issue there where there is a lot of software that just doesn't work right, or it just doesn't work at all. And then when you get to a subset of Linux software, then you have probably more open source projects that somebody started then abandoned, that don't run anymore. Uh, and when you get to well, no, it's actually the other direction. When you get to Linux software, there's probably a lot less Linux software than there is Windows software. And when you get to Linux software that has been designed in a Docker container, because I'm not willing to go and try and build my own Docker container, which would be the next step to this whole process, is just to embrace learning how to make your own Docker container. Oh man, it's this guy. This guy again. I hate this guy. So yeah, the program I was trying to use was a Docker container for pure FTPD to run an FTPS server, which was only really going to be used for one service anyways. And after putting about 2 days of work in it, on and off, I finally just decided it was not worth continuing down that path and trying that. That's a Jeez, it is really way better to wait and play this for earlier, isn't it? So then I started moving on to some other things, trying to get the environment.env file for Docker to have all the environmental settings and have them become references, thus variables. I started moving some of the things that would be on a main server but wouldn't be on a, like, well, they call them slaves. I don't know what the term is, so I'm gonna just have to use master and slave still. That's the only terminology that's even in my head, let alone what the new socially acceptable way of saying it is. But I know I've heard somebody say a replacement system, but I can't remember it. Anyways, my point is the main file should be the slave settings for a server. So if you had a secondary server that was going to copy most of the data and be a potential distributor of a website, which this is how websites work, and I suppose that deserves to be explained, is that websites often have many clones, slaves of the same data. So you don't go to the same Amazon.com server that somebody in Siberia goes to. Instead, everything hits a central junction, and very possibly and likely a cache server that's even being run by the ISP first and foremost, just to save bandwidth. But assuming there isn't a man-in-the-middle cache server saving a lot of the unencrypted data, you would be going to a server closest to you, and there might be 3 or 4 servers, and they might very well be set up in a round robin setting, so that the first person goes to server 1, then the next client goes to server 2, and then the next person goes to server 3, and then the next person goes to server 4, and then it wraps around and goes back to server 1 again. That's very possibly the system. So what you would want to do is, in your main Docker file, is have settings that say, all right, well, this server is going to get its data. Particularly, you're talking about services like Redis and MySQL database services, things like that, they may all in the back end connect or duplicate data differently. Redis is a great example of that. So you'd want some settings where you could give the main file to 10 different computers and say, all right, implement this main file. And then you take that main file and you use the docker-compose.override.yaml file, which gets automatically read and changes the settings to override the default settings, and that's for your main computer, your main server. That the main server where all the logs may go, where all of the data may go, where the database server may happen. So this is it's an interesting almost exploration of what a mass deployment setup would be without actually being able to do mass deployment without having a whole bunch of virtual servers somewhere, be virtual machines somewhere. Really? Let's edit this deck and try this. Never even got around to this, did I? I don't even know what this is as far as a deck, so what should we bring in? Just throw in 3 of those. No, we won't get too fancy with it. We'll throw in 3 of those and call it a day. So I'm still working on that. I got web trees to install on my server fairly quickly. By the way, I also want to mention DevOps apparently is more of a standard than an actual description of a job. So I had thought that DevOps might be the thing I'm doing, or what they would be doing it. I suppose more what I'm doing it would be best described as just development. Development would be, yeah, I guess the best description, because it's definitely not operations, since I'm not really putting any effort to make sure things run well while people are using it. While it would be in like a server. And I imagine there's probably a significant number of IT jobs out there where you don't get to choose, and they're just not described that way, and you're just called an IT administrator. Where there probably is, at the very least, some personal preference reasons why somebody might want to work only in development but not in production, or why somebody should only be assigned to development instead of production. I think my style of doing things and my more experimental side and desires probably suit me much better to work in development instead of being like a highly anal, security conscious person who would be better suited in production to make sure everything is working and there are no bugs and there aren't going to be any problems. Although I'm not sure anybody like that really exists so much, because it might very well just be a case of there always being some level of bugs. There's talk of the Russian hack, and that hacked a software called SolarWinds. Turns out the Linux equivalent of that is Cacti. It's basically a back-end log collecting and visualization software. Cacti and SolarWinds, SolarWinds being closed source, and So I would highly recommend anybody that has just been hacked because of SolarWinds to have not used it in the first place and instead use Cacti. Although I'm speaking without any experience of having used Cacti. But I'll set that up, and then there's a stupidly easy web server to connect to MySQL databases called AdMiner, which is not designed well enough to my standards, particularly because it is so open to people just logging into a basically unsecured website because it doesn't have any users, and then it just asks you to type in the database server address and the username and password to the database, which basically exposes the database if you don't have a good enough security on your MySQL database, which is in an odd way the exact opposite of the idea of using Docker to sandbox the MySQL MariaDB database server in the first place. I'm also not really sure if there's any scenario where I would deep dive into the databases of the different websites that use it, which there's only about 3 so far that actually do need to use it. Most websites don't have enough data or to justify using a database in the first place, or the data doesn't move or change, so there's no reason to integrate such a complicated system. But yeah, Guacamole is a remote management software, so you can virtual network connect to other computers inside your network, thus potentially not exposing so many computers through the internet. But it oddly does not support a why did I play 2 of those? That didn't make any sense. That was bad. That was a mistake. Well, that still worked, but not anywhere as well as it should have. I'm going to test out a program called UR Backup, which is a server just for backing up. Its client basically auto-detects things, but I think compared to just having files backed up using SFTP and an SFTP client from a Windows PC, might be a better choice. This really is coming down to a speed test more than anything. That I want to desperately find a system that can at least feel like it's approaching 100 megabits, if not a gigabit per second when moving data. And if they're not going to approach that, if it's not going to approach that speed, that's going to be frustrating to say the least. But right now, the FTP, the secure FTP server, is averaging somewhere between 30 to maybe peaking out at 90 megabytes per second. And I think probably a lot of that has to do with the router I have, which I don't have a bad router. If anything, I still have the top of the line router from even a couple of years ago, which is just a sad statement on routers not really getting much beefier, or probably not needing to get much beefier either. +4. Okay. Who has Bane? This one has Bane.
The river shall never run dry.
In the turn. So yeah, I need to test UR backup. I think there is a big problem though, is in that it's going to try and make a full single file for the hard drive I have, which is like 4.5 terabytes, and that's not going to really work at all. I need individual files backed up, but I need the permissions to be right so that they can be restored, and it's actually going to make a bootable Windows computer at the end of it, which maybe at the end of the day that's just not possible anymore. It's very, very possible that that is the case, that Windows has just completely abandoned the concept of letting anyone have a survivable backup, and it is just all now about forcing people into backing up their data and only their data, which that would be annoying if that's the case. But also, when you're talking about a ZFS file system, getting one large file is probably not going to help with deduplication. It's probably not going to help with compression as well as it could, although as I understand it, the compression on ZFS is more as far as small chunks of files, so you could even have similar files still used to decompress the file system. Although, once again, I don't know how much that actually works and what percentage you're really going to get. But particularly if you're going to talk about backing up my main computer, those hard drives in my server are going to fill up fast if I'm not careful. But that's the goal, on the other hand, too, is that you want to get it to work. I'm also trying to get some of the other server softwares to work, giving them another chance before I delete the configurations and give up on them. RetroArch Web, for instance, I want to give it one more chance because that would be cool if that worked. I still have like a Minecraft server software I haven't even started on, but I am somewhat quickly running out of ideas and different types of servers to even try and set up, all behind one. And then Nextcloud, I think stupidly told me it could upgrade, and then I tried to upgrade it and borked it, I think, a little bit, and then and so now I'm probably gonna have to put a little bit more work than I should to try and recover from that, although it doesn't seem like there's any major loss of data, and there wouldn't be any loss of files. It would just be potentially having to reinstall the whole thing. But at the very least, I have made a lot of progress, because when I first started learning how to do all of these Docker servers, I was messing up Nextcloud and reinstalling it multiple times within a day. So I've gotten a lot better, as it were.
I wasn't supposed to lose here.
I also have in the back of my head a thought around getting a Raspberry Pi Zero and building a honeypot on it. That might be an interesting thought, certainly. Although at a certain point I don't know if that's worth my time for my network, because I'd much prefer to just have good firewalls that block intruders instead of having potentially something inside the local area network to catch people that connect to my local area network, because there's so few people that connect to my local area network that unless I somehow infected my own computer with a virus, it's highly unlikely anybody would be able to get it on the inside. Of course, that is a outside in mentality in which was for a long time the default standard attitude. It was never really a good thought, but that was the attitude with security people for a very long time, is that all they needed is a firewall and they needed basically no security once on the inside, and that's just not the case at all. You need security almost definitely on the inside too, to catch the people that have brought the bad USB drives with the viruses on it from their home and installed it on their home on the entire network. There's also, of course, the bad attitude amongst IT security in which just nothing is done ever. And sadly, that's worked for a lot of people. Anyways, let's start talking about video games, because I could probably just ramble on, and it's not like I'm saying much. Did I mention Guacamole doesn't allow for elliptical curve private keys? That's annoying. It means I'm gonna have to make some older, less secure private keys, and then allow all the servers I want Guacamole to connect to have access to allow connections on those less secure keys. You can do a 4096, I believe it is, bit RSA encryption key, and it's not terrible, but it's definitely not a go forward thing when setting up a new server, that you want to be using non-elliptical curve keys. But yeah, that definitely happens sometime. Why, there's just so if I do this and give myself a copy of that,
and away we go.
so yeah, that's a little annoying, but I'll live with it. I'm also a little peeved with the Docker image of Guacamole, in that there is no like configuration environmental settings or anything. So the only way you could have some default connections to default servers would be to pull the information from the MySQL database and then upload it to a different MySQL database, which maybe you don't really need to do that. Maybe you could just point multiple instances of the same Guacamole servers, multiple Guacamole servers to the same single database. That might work. Yeah, that would work a lot better, actually. So I guess that's the mentality. That was the solution to that. Anyways, video games. We have Escape from Tarkov update 0.12.9 expands the woods map and a lot more tomorrow. We're getting a lot of Christmas announcements. Also, I'll mention server wipe is coming too. So if anybody's playing Escape from Tarkov, looks like there's going to be some changes. Gamatsu has an article here. Sons of the Forest launches in 2021. They have a second trailer. Sons of the Forest looks like it's a survival game with some monsters and zombies. It looks nice, But I really have to question, is there ever going to be a scenario where a survival game like this actually does work? Particularly with zombies. This seems fairly crazy. I accidentally clicked on my regular YouTube app and started getting ads immediately. Just one video, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I put up with that. Just how terrible it's gotten. It just flooded with ads. Alright. My stomach is growling like crazy. Alright. Do we attack or do we leave things alone?
I just want to be happy. Leave my sight.
Let's see. Games Radar has the 100 best games of the generation, which honestly I feel like you're just gonna have a huge list here. So let me just crawl through this fairly quickly. Like 94 is The Evil Within, which that seems like if that's your baseline, then we know what they're talking about. Although then 93 is Super Hot, and I would argue that Super Hot is probably better than Evil Within, and then 92 is Dead Cells. So I'm not sure if these are actually in any kind of order, or if they just picked 100 games out of a list of probably 150 that IGN really reviewed. Batman Arkham Knight is 87. Rock Band 4 is 86. Then Tales from the Borderlands is 85, which honestly you are just comparing apples to oranges here. Completely. Its attack or defense has been changed. Let's do that.
Is in my orbit.
And then do that.
Is in my orbit.
Then should we evolve?
Leave my sight.
By your will, O Lord.
If I play this, then these two won't summon. So you do that, we do that, that gives it that and that. And then that doesn't trigger their ability, though, in that turn. Let's see, Ollie Ollie. Basically, they're listing almost every game. 79 is Lego Marvel Superheroes. I could mention a lot of these games I've played in the past year or two. Oxenfree is 77. So you go from like one extreme to another. Then right below Oxenfree is, which Oxenfree is like this, kind of horror game where you choose different lines of dialogue as you walk around, and that's pretty much all you do. You get stuck in some puzzle areas where you have to walk around to solve the puzzles, and that's about it. It's not great. But then Ghost of Tsushima and Cuphead are 74 and 73. Then Deus Ex Mankind Divided is at 72. So if they're working towards the #1 game, I don't get the whole order here. Then they've broken it up into 4 different pages. Let's see. Yakuza, Dragon Quest 11, Metro Exodus. I've forgotten about Metro Exodus. They gave Firewatch 65, Final Fantasy Remake 64. I would think Final Fantasy Remake Should be a lot better than that. And then they say Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor is better than Final Fantasy VII. I don't know why they would have even numbered these, frankly. This they should have just said this is a completely random list of games. And so you have like Call of Duty Modern Warfare, then you have Tacoma, better than that. Then you have Final Fantasy XIV, better than that. Then you have Beat Saber, better than that. Then you have The Last Guardian, better than that. Then Resident Evil 2 Remake, better than that. Like, it doesn't make sense. Even if they told me that every like IGN or Games Radar employee in this case had just put in a point system 1 out of 10, and then they combined everybody's random opinions so that there would be like a maximum points, that would make sense. Like if there were 10 employees and they each could give 10 points to everything, then that might explain this listings. Although it doesn't even have to be 10 employees. Could be 100 employees. And then just whoever gets the most points is number one. Rise of the Tomb Raider, there's a game I haven't played. I finally did buy Dying Light just on the last sale, which there is a Steam Winter Sale going on right now, and we'll talk about that. So I will play that. Gears 5. It's one I'd be willing to play. They've put Cyberpunk 2077 on the 50th place. And then Hitman 2 above it. And then Undertale a little bit further. Life is Strange Season 1, they're giving 40, they're putting in position 46. Let's do this. And then hit that. And that. And then hit that. Do that. And then Resident Evil 7 below Season 1 of Life is Strange. Then The Witness. The Witness, I think, as a puzzle game, was a pretty good game, and yet it's not easy to remember it, certainly. Wolfenstein New Colossus, Wolfenstein 2 New Colossus. I think I may have that game, or I have the Old Blood, certainly, and that would be the next game to play. Definitely not seeing any games I don't recognize yet. Well, here's one, Towerfall Ascension. Apparently I never saw that. Shadow of the Colossus. Overwatch. I don't think too many people are playing Overwatch anymore. Monster Hunter World. It'd be a hard thing to justify playing that at this point. Let's see. Do this. And do this. And let's go ahead and attack here.
Time to head home.
See Doom, and then Sea of Thieves is ranked 35. Call of Duty Warzone, No Man's Sky is ranked 32. Rainbow Six Siege. PT gets ranked 30. Persona 5 gets ranked 29. Hades gets ranked 28. Spider-Man gets 27. The Outer Wilds gets 26. I could see maybe now if they started with their number one game and then just randomly placed everything below the bottom 25, that might explain something. Dreams gets ranked 24, though. I don't know how you get that. Then Control is 23. Then Celeste is 22. Then Alien Isolation, which apparently came out in 2014. I didn't realize there was an Alien game that came out that recently. Alien Isolation is 21. And then Return of the Obra Dinn is 20. I recently recorded that. I may not have scheduled to put it out yet. Then Assassin's Creed Odyssey is 19, Forza, and then Rocket League, Horizon Zero Dawn. There's a game I want to play. I don't think it's on PC yet, but we do know I think it's coming to PC. So that's nice to know at least.
Do you know my master?
Let's go and enroll this.
If you're my master, cleansing mode.
Suppose it is worth pointing out for a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, if it came out in 2017 and it's not going to come out until like 2021, you're talking 4 years minimum difference there, and it's really hard to say a 4 or 5 year old game is relevant still. And then they go from like Horizon Zero Dawn, and then they go and play Inside, and then they go to Nier Automata. I was mentioning Nier Automata when finishing up Virtue's Last Reward, because like the outfit that 2B wears in Nier Automata, it's a little lewd. It's kind of like this negligee type outfit, kind of high fashion type outfit, but it clothes her like she's showing not a ton of leg, not a lot of butt cheek, not really any cleavage at all. It's weird fashion, certainly, and it definitely plays to a certain fetish that I'm sure the creator had, but it's not incredibly distracting. Whereas Alice in Virtue's Last Reward, just being basically nude, is just so visually distracting, particularly when you see all the other characters are not wearing anything close. All the characters in the Nier universe seem to be wearing basically the same style of outfits, or at least all the characters in the same organization that 2B is in. This is not really a great image to point out on that because it's so small and not zoomed in, but yeah. So I would think if you're going to have a main character in your story, you should go more wild fashion and not just go with skin, particularly since it was Virtue's Last Reward is like a 3DS game showing these terrible polygons. That's not the place to try and go for attractive character design, because it's just not going to translate to the medium well. 13 is Kentucky is Dishonored 2, 12 is Kentucky Route Zero, 11 is Destiny 2. That seems like still it's just random. 10 they gave to Fortnite Battle Royale. And then 9 they give to Uncharted 4, Thief's Edge, which I assume none of the Uncharted games will ever make their way to PC. Not in any... you would have to really hope. And honestly, I'm not sure I'd really want to play an Uncharted game after playing all the Tomb Raider games. Like it seemed that might be a little too redundant. Let's go hit that. And then attack. And that. 8 is What Remains of Edith Finch. I'm not sure I bought that game, but that was one I wanted to play. And 7 is Stardew Valley. I did play that game, but I couldn't get into it. 6 they give to The Last of Us Part 2, which goes to show how this numbering system, if it is a numbering system, is way off. Then 5 is Red Dead Redemption 2, which at this point just shows that Games Radar has no credibility at all. While there was a lot of hype for Red Dead Redemption 2, there certainly wasn't major accolades and people playing it months later, even though they are still trying to get people to play Red Dead Online. See, number 4 is Titanfall 2. I don't think that should be number 4. Number 3 is Bloodborne, which almost implies that they were just obsessed with Bloodborne. Number 2 is God of War. That's a game I haven't played. I don't think it's on PC either. And then I have to really wonder if God of War, like so many games, will maintain its position as the years go on if they don't manage to make a good sequel, because they are very potentially going to just mess it up horribly and make a generic sequel that just is more of the same in a world that will want something fairly different. Then the number 1, I can't fully disagree with this, is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. But I feel like there were more games, certainly, that could have been on this list. Whether it's supposed to be an exhaustive list of all the games that came out, or the top 100 games that came out this year, or this decade, or not, there definitely feels like there are some blaring holes there. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Demon Killer VR, which seems to be a VR game that's fairly dark, where you're swinging swords, and then there's some asset flip demons that chase after you. It's $8.09. We're continuing to see VR games fairly cheap these days. The idea of running around with samurai swords and killing demons is not a terrible idea, particularly when they're trying to get fairly bloody with it, but the polish here is just not good enough to justify what they're trying. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Leaper, which obviously is just a platforming game. Maybe it's a game where you can't control the character's movements. You can only control whether he jumps or not, which that would make some sense as far as the gameplay that I'm seeing. But that's going to get fairly old fairly quickly. And there's Disappearing Platforms. It's $1.19, English full audio. I don't know why we're having timeouts here. Like, I feel like I had tried to improve my quality of service, and somehow I've maybe made it worse. Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1674, which literally is only one game of Akita Oga Mystery Guide, The Frozen Silver Bell Flower, which is 30 out of 40. So this is obviously that game. So they're taking Christmas off in Japan, although honestly I'm not sure how much of that actually boils down to them taking Christmas off and them just perhaps slowing down because of the end of the year and the pandemic. And what one can only describe as a weird announcement, Major Nelson tweeted out that Solitaire 3D is now available for Windows, which I feel like for Windows 10, Xbox One, and Xbox Series S, this must be a different Solitaire than the Solitaire that Microsoft themselves sells, which I guess it's probably worth mentioning that Microsoft sells a Solitaire now for Windows 10 instead of just giving you a free Klondike Solitaire game. Maybe they don't sell it. Maybe it's more of a free-to-play package, but they definitely put a lot of changes into it and just eliminated it in general as a default installed app. Solitaire was originally installed in Windows 3.1 to help people learn how to use the mouse, and it almost certainly did play a role in the adoption of Windows and computers in general. I imagine even in early days of computer usage, if there wasn't a game people could goof off and play it with, a lot of people would have just had 100% negative association with computers and not tried to learn them, and not ever gotten on board of it. In all fairness, I still think there's probably a lot of people that have never really gotten on board with figuring out how computers work. I wish I was getting more quick disconnects for all the network trouble we're having today. Once again, is this because of Christmas, or is this because of me setting up some server somewhere that is taking up more bandwidth? Yeah, the backup software in particular uses UDP packets, which means they would just be broadcast, and if you get them, you get them, and if you don't, you don't. Which potentially could cause more bandwidth usage, but in general, any backup software is going to use more bandwidth, probably a lot of it. And that initial backup is definitely going to be painful regardless to fully back up a computer. Here we have a game on Steam called On Target's VR Darts, and there's something to be said here for this idea. Now, there is a danger that you will accidentally swing and hit something, or let go of your controller and have it the wrist break off for the way the controllers work in VR. But the idea of playing darts is appealing because you're not usually very capable of playing darts in general. There's just you have to have a dartboard, which is experience. You have to have a wall you're willing to put a lot of holes into, because that's just the way it's going to happen. Even if it's a concrete wall, there are going to be some chips in that wall after a decent amount of dart playing. You can use plastic soft tip dartboards, certainly all you want, and you'll have a slightly worse experience there of having the tips break and bend. But yeah, you can go that route, but you might as well get a regular dartboard and use metal tips. You can definitely go down the rabbit hole of spending a lot on darts also, as the darts themselves tend to break fairly often, and you'll break metal tips, even you'll break the feathers on the back. You'll potentially bend the shaft even. I definitely did go down the rabbit hole of playing darts at one point. It's also a game, though, that you need somebody you're willing to play. It's not particularly fun to play the single versions of darts, and a game like this where you're playing, I want to call it cricket, but I forgot the name of it. A game like this and how the scoreboard works requires you to have at least two people playing. This is a thing where you have to potentially hit a double or get 3 darts in each of these rings before you can start scoring on it, and then at that point on the 4th hit, you start to gain points. So, for example, let's see. This is play X01, which would be 301, 401. It's not even. It's showing in the score. It's not even that game, but ideally here you would want to hit the triple ring and get a triple 20 the first round, and that would unlock the 20 for you, and so only you could then score on the 20. So then you hit triple 20 again, you get 60 points. You hit the triple 20 again, you get another 60 for 120. So if you're playing a 301 game now in that form of it, there's a lot of different games you can play, and they're all fairly easy rules to figure out. So then your opponent's turn would have to hit the 20, and let's say that they tried to hit the triple 20 to lock you out so you can't get any more points, but they miss and they hit like the triple 5, well then they've unlocked the 5, and then they miss again and hit the triple 1, they've unlocked the 1, then they miss again and they hit just 120. And so next turn you hit the triple 20 again, you had 120, then you have 180, hit it again, you have 240, hit it a third time, you have 300. So that's potentially where you'd want to be if you're playing to 300 points, which you may not be playing to 300, you're probably playing to 301, which you can't go over in most games of anything 01. So in this scenario, third turn, your opponent comes in here, let's say he hits the double 20, you can't get any more points on 20. Good for you. Doesn't matter if you hit the 20, it would have just ended your turn anyways and reset you back to 300. You literally can only win if you hit the 1, which means you have to open the 1. So ideally your opponent then would have to hit the triple 1 and lock you out, and then they've potentially won the game at that point, because you played like so stupidly that you only went for triple 20s, which typically you are targeting the triple 20. You're not actually trying to hit the bullseye. A double bullseye in the middle ring is only worth 50. A triple 20 will give you 60. A triple 12 will give you 24. So anything above a triple 12 gives you more than what a regular bullseye would get. No, a triple 12 gives you 36. So, yeah. 15 would be 45, 16 would be 48. So anything between above a 17 would be higher than a double bullseye. So targeting for a double bullseye is a sucker's game in almost every case. Anyways, this is $7.49, and English, French, German, and Spain, Spanish, and I'm going to put it on the follow list. If I ever do get a VR headset, I think this might be an interesting game to check out. Although it is also a game that very possibly is way more fun to play in the real world and not fun at all to play in a virtual setting. Let's see. Next we have a game called Formosa Night Market Arcade by Taiwan, which seems to be a VR game of little arcade games, which I don't think you'd recognize any of these. They seem kind of like games you might have played, but they don't quite seem right. I have wanted to see a collection of arcade games like this, potentially not in VR, and there's a couple on my follow list that I've put on the follow list that kind of made sense. This angle makes the ball not even look like it's round, but I don't think I see enough here to interest me. Plus that name is very weird. $3.59, English and traditional Chinese. Taiwan is a beautiful island known as Formosa during the Age of Discovery. Yeah, this almost feels like this is a Taiwanese advertisement more than anything. Even if you can't come to Taiwan during the COVID-19 pandemic, you can still play with the VR devices and enjoy the games from Taiwan. Which, yeah, do you really want to put COVID-19 in the description of your game? That seems crazy. Let's go and kill that. And let's go ahead and hit this.
Give me strength. Play my part. Time to dance.
And attack. So yeah, that game is not coming to the fall list. Gamatsu has Galgun Returns, second introduction trailer. 6-minute overview of the game's characters and systems. Oh, speaking of characters and systems, I'm not sure. Is this supposed to be a remake of the original game, or is this just the third game in the series? I feel like it's the third game in the series. Feels like the animation style might be slightly different also. In the first game of the Nonary games, the 999, there's like 6 different endings you unlock. Instead of what you would have thought would have been 9 endings, because there's 9 characters. But I'm guessing what happened is they went really, really crazy in the second game, because there's definitely more than 6 endings. There's definitely more than 9 endings, because there's so many branch off points where you get bad endings, on top of the few places where you can just get a game over anyways. So I would say there's at least 18 different endings, probably closer to 21, 22. So you already had, in the case of 999, an incredibly difficult or an incredibly long game. It's kind of ridiculous then to make it even longer with extra endings. And there definitely were characters that seemed that at the end they literally just said, yeah, the reason you're here is almost because there is no reason. They really didn't explain it well enough, or to my satisfaction. This
You know, my master?
and this. Well, I'm looking at Galgun here, and it does look like it's not a remake of the first game. It looks like it is a continuation of the series. And I'm seeing some anime girls getting shot in the butt and some cleavage being shown, and so that they aren't particularly getting any less lewd. If anything, they're continuing the general concept of an on-rail shooter where anime girls are trying to shower you with affection, and you have to shoot them off with your love gun, as it were, and have them fall to the ground in ecstasy. In a weird way, the concept of Galgun, I won't say the presentation of Galgun, but the concept is actually less violent than most shooter games, so it kind of would probably be a little bit more kid friendly, and if you thought of it that perspective. Looks like there's going to be branching paths in Galgun's Returns. Also, it feels like it's more pattern based, instead of having just kind of random people in random places. Seems like there's maybe going to be a collection mini game of sorts where you try to collect all the girls, and there seems to be an emphasis here of different anime girls with different types of panty patterns as you look up their skirts. But it doesn't feel like a lot of the characters are physically very different. They have different hairstyles in the standard anime thing, and they often are wearing different outfits for girls who would have all been at the same, one assumes, almost all girls school.
Master.
But yeah, there's kind of a Pokedex of the anime girls, it seems. You're gonna get 3D models, and like in this one trailer I've seen a significant amount of panty shots, and now they're pointing out that the characters will breathe in and out, and that they'll swing left and right with their hips, so you can see their boobs subtly go up and down. But I'm not seeing a lot of big busted girls. that doesn't seem to be a fetish of this game creator's. Persuasion. Let's see. Rush. They're finally getting to the end, and we're starting to see some characters in like bikinis and in their underwear. It's really not that explicit. Even now they're showing like extreme zooms of the upskirt shots, and it's not like you're getting anything other than polygonal squares there. It's not like you're seeing the curvature of genitalia through the clothes or camel toe or anything. They're not going that extreme. Probably could have rushed at some point there. So yeah, Galgun Returns looks like it's fine. Although, at a certain point, I'd almost prefer to play the first couple of Galguns games. I feel like they still need to do something with the DLC that's in, I think, the first game, and it's just how ridiculously expensive it is. But also, that's probably a game where I could easily just play the main game and not buy the DLC, because the DLC is just unlocking different boob sizes and costumes. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Destinata Full Red, which looks like it is a frustration platformer. It does seem like it has some nice art style to it, but then there's also some pixel graphics that look just pretty bad. Like when I see this looks interesting, but when I see this looks very uninteresting. And it's from a developer and publisher named DieClick, which is a pretty bad name. $2.39. I guess I'll put it on the follow list just to be generous. Let's see. TechCraft has an article. This KFC console proves anything is possible. So, the KFC apparently put out a real PC that also has like a heating basket for chicken, and so it's supposed to be a PC in like a KFC, Country Fried Chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken size and shape. They built it from Cooler Master, which isn't a terrible which it's weird, but in a weird way, it's also probably decent advertisement without having to do much work, because you can have Cooler Master agree to make, say, 10,000 KFC consoles based on demand, and that would be that. I wouldn't be surprised if they just take off the KFC console and have a PC that's just in this round shape. There's enough waiting rooms and just crazy overpriced offices that might buy a weird round PC anyways, that you could sell it. And the components on the inside are probably not so internally proprietary or built in that it would really matter that much. Yeah, it's fairly easier to announce some overpriced device very few people will buy as a bit of advertisement than it would be to announce a sale of just, we've got more chicken to sell, so we're going to reduce the price of all the chicken. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if throughout the pandemic there's just been a bit of a overage as far as food and less demand, as it were, for KFC and other fast food restaurant chains.
The dead have no need of words.
It's a little weird to even call KFC fast food, but it is. Let's see, moving on, Guilty Gear XX Accent Core plus R for PC has GGPO rollback netcode update now being available. So the fighting game will probably play a little bit better for people who are super into that kind of information. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam here called Cyan, which, looking at this thumbnail, makes me think it's probably an asset flip Chinese game. Let's see. Yeah, you have a girl. She has a lightsaber. She also has a gun, and she's shooting from the wrong side. Seems like there's a bunch of monsters, but it seems like there's also conversation trees. What's funny is this feels like it has a little bit more polish than you would generally expect. So this kind of does feel like there's maybe the beginnings of game here. So if you told me this was early access, I might be willing to give it a chance. But it's not. It's got a Chinese name. It's $3.99, English and Chinese language. Yeah, just don't feel like there's enough here to justify putting your effort into playing something like that. ScumVM has announced 2 new engines, I suppose. The first is GLULX interpreter, for which there are many free games available on the IF archive. Not sure what the IF archive is. The second is the Comprehend engine, games developed by Polyware. At the moment, only 3 Comprehend games are ready for testing: Transylvania, Crimson Crown, and OO Topos. These 3 are freely available at the IF archive. There is also, however, a re-release of Transylvania also available for free from Graphics Magician website, which isn't yet supported. As for other Comprehend games, Talisman will likely be supported in the future, but it requires significant future work. The other remaining games like Transylvania 3 use completely different engines, so will remain out of the scope for the foreseeable future. So if you don't know any of those games, which I don't personally, that's just an indication that they are continuing to work with their focused development of emulation of old games and focusing specifically on engines in games that make sense compared to doing something like DOSBox, which was a much more broader emulator designed to sort of work for everything but not really be optimized for anything. And ScumVM as a project has kind of just run out of other things to do with their time, so they are moving forward with picking new engines and picking new games, which is nice. I wouldn't be surprised if 50 years down the line almost all games are emulated through ScumVM. If they're done better through that emulator than other emulators, that's great. Here's the IF archive, and it's a long list of games that I'm not really recognizing any of these. I don't know what the GB lorb file format means. It's a really long file extension, twice as long as what you would expect. File extensions generally don't really mean anything, but they used to be limited to 3 characters, and then HTML files turned into HTML files, and then websites were using file extensions of 4 nowadays for HTML specifically, but then you have like PHP that are back to 3. So it kind of seemingly bounces all over the place.
Is in my
Play my heart.
Can you?
Should have played this. Yeah, scrolling down this list, not only are these games not recognizable, there's very few of them that feel like they are licensed game. There's like a game called The Hobbit that's based on The Hobbit, but it's probably such an old one that it's not based on any movie release of The Hobbit. It's probably directly based off of the
Prepare for the end.
the book. There's a game here called My Girlfriend's an Evil B-Word from 2011. Let's see.
Can you keep me company? Awaken.
Found your weakness. Oh dear.
Let's go ahead and hit this.
Begin.
That was a waste. Actually, I didn't need to kill that. Because if I had just ended my turn there and not used the evolution, that would have worked fine. Yeah, I don't recognize any of these games. I feel like either these are games that are like Russian games or something that just never came over to the West, or they are small games from a very small community that people made. Which, yeah. Zork I7 is the only game I even recognize, the very last one on the list from 2008. Inform 7, I guess, might be what the IF archive is unless it's supposed to be the interactive fiction archive, which does say it's a public service of the Interactive Fiction Technology Foundation. One day install enemies. And then play that. And end the turn. We already talked about this, but again, the Duke Nukem lawsuit over music settlement has been reached. I should also mention that in another story, we are right on the verge of all Chinese video game players being required to have real name and real IDs on files to play video games so that they can be tracked better. And yep, China is just, they had announced these rules a long time ago, but they're finally going into implementation. Let's do that. And then guess you do this. Do we want to kill this? Moving on, I Want to Be the Guy remastered by fans with the developer's blessing. So, I Want to Be the Guy is this like frustration platforming game that became fairly popular, and apparently the fans decided they wanted to remaster it. Flash games are also no longer going to be supported by anything, which they've been saying that for a long time, so I don't know what's really different this time when it got said. But apparently they really mean it this time.
It's the small things in life.
Fire right, meow!
Let's see.
Please steal responsibly.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Vice Wave, which looks like it's a low polygon GTA style clone, which, yeah, that's not going to work. I don't see any reason why you would want to play something that looks like it's almost directly trying to rip off GTA. Early access for $8.99, English, Russian. Gamma Sutra has a blog here. Who's playing what on PlayStation 5? Let's see. Apparently, these people are playing these hours. So, yeah. It's not super surprising list there, really. And they're gonna go down and do a deeper dive if you really care. If you want to read that article, I'll leave it to you to read.
I'm gonna make history.
Do that.
And away we go.
And do that. Put that in your hand, I guess. Then make me another copy of that. This whole deck is designed around a bad concept, I think. See, YouTube Creators has been tweeting up some bits of information. Useless information, like 58% of people are open to watching digital content made by creators of any age, which that is terrible, terrible information to know that 42% of all people who watch YouTube will be ageist and not watch your content if you are either, I assume, too young or too old to someone's liking, which arguably means 42% of all YouTube viewers are kids, and kids won't watch videos not made by kids, or 42% of viewers are adults and who don't want to watch kids' videos, which in all fairness, I guess I kind of fall under that category too. I'd really have a hard time following or watching any video made by somebody like Ryan's toy review, like, because I know, even though almost certainly there are adults helping him out / maybe forcing him to review game toys, I know he's not going to have an expertise or any interesting perspective there as far as yeah, I don't think that would work for me as content I want to listen to. Although in all fairness, I am really just listening to the same YouTube channels over and over again these days, even more, and that is half YouTube suggestions and half me not going out of my way to find new content creators, as the older ones are making less content, or as I get bored of the older content creators.
Hello, my master.
Then they did a poll here. What percentage of YouTube users watched comedic content to cope? Apparently 33% watched 100% of comedic content, which that, again, is fairly useless information unless you're making the argument that you should just always make only comedic content. Here's one. Videos with some form of beginner in the title. And apparently 1 trillion won the poll there. All of this is just trying to point people back to YouTube's Culture and Trends report. I hadn't even thought that there was something going on with having the word beginner in your title. there might have been some way I could have worked with that if I was just trying to get views. But honestly, I don't really want to pull those kinds of shenanigans. This culture report loaded in. Let's see if we can load it again by reloading. It does this whole fancy animation. It has a really fancy animation for kind of no reason. And then it's this picture. We had seen this picture before, but it was just a stationary picture, and now it's a whole video and it's tilt shifted. It's still showing this girl kind of in an odd exercise outfit. And then somebody really went fancy with this. I don't know if I particularly care. Can you go back up? How do you go back up? You scroll with the mouse, alright. So, yeah, here we've got a VTuber. And then here we have senior creators. And then we have indigenous rappers. And Dad, how do I guess that's who that guy is. I'd heard them talk about that YouTube channel, but I definitely hadn't paid any attention to it.
It's the small things in life.
Cleansing mode.
Let's see, what else? We got some more people. Is this guy body painted, or did they paint over his shirt because there was a logo on it? We've got Minecraft speedruns and watch-alongs and interactive fitness. So I guess that girl probably is a thing. Man, this is a horrible way to present information, though, to just have things all over the place. It's trying to be flashy while failing to actually convey information. So it almost certainly seems like they didn't have anything to actually say. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if YouTube said, we're just shutting down next year. That would suck for me, certainly, but I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to do something like that. Probably never a complete shutdown, but just a major reduction of things. Here you have a guy in a monkey suit playing a saxophone. Potentially with this whole copyright being lifted to a felony for illegal streaming, and a copyright small claims court being established potentially if that gets signed into law, which it seems like it has been slipped into the most recent stimulus check bill. And so if it does get signed into law or put into law one way or another, then that's gonna potentially scare a bunch of people off or send a lot of kids to jail for streaming video games if that's how people want to implement and enforce law. At a certain point, though, more laws aren't needed in the United States. There's plenty of laws to catch anyone doing anything bad. It's the selective enforcement of the prosecutor's office and the police that's the issue, because the police are thoroughly inconsistent about whether they want to enforce the law or not, almost 100% based on their own desires and whims. If they like you, they won't enforce laws. If they don't like you, they will enforce all kinds of arcane and unfair laws that exist on the books. There's a need for simplification of the law, not adding more laws. That way, people should know the general rules. We should get back to something close to like the Ten Commandments. If the Ten Commandments were the only laws. Not that I'm saying every one of the Ten Commandments in either of the two versions of the Ten Commandments that are mentioned in the Bible, which are different. I'm not saying use those as an example, but if there was only 10 laws one had to follow, that would probably be better. We could certainly decriminalize a lot of things and make them civil cases, but instead they're going the other direction and making copyright and thus the protection of big business and And big businesses copyright's really only a criminal offense for no real reason. Hmm. Moving on, we have a TechRaptor article, Stardew Valley 1.5 update released on PC. Console released next year. Okay, we may have already talked about that. Let's continue to just try and burn through all the news. Here we have Tabletop Soccer, which just does not look like a nicely animated version of a tabletop soccer game. It's 89 cents, English and Chinese. Still seeing the average amount of bad Chinese games so far. Next we have a game on Steam called Animal Rescuers, which looks like these are fairly nicely designed animals. But then it looks like you're almost playing a Witcher game. It's like you're playing a Witcher game who's rescuing animals in a fantasy world. See, I usually call a game like this an asset flip game, but it doesn't look like an asset flip game. Even though it almost certainly does have assets that have been flipped in it. So that puts me in a bad position. It's $9.79, English and Turkish. I gotta put it on the follow list. I gotta see what people have to say about it. Hello Neighbor, Hello Guest, Hello Neighbor 2 pre-alpha is now on Steam, which seems like you're doing Hello Neighbor stuff, whatever that is. It's free. The actual game will be in 2021, English only. I don't know specifically what is being added in the Hello Neighbor series that brings it up from being just a standard hide and seek stealth game. But maybe something is being added to it. Maybe it's just a lot of polish and a lot of work. Or maybe it just is the one game that caught everyone's attention. Next we have a game on Steam here called Hand Simulator Horror, which I assume that's not really anything. Such a low effort, terrible name. The game itself has like the same asset flipped character 3 different times. $2.99 English. Yeah, there's nothing here.
Never set foot in the sun.
So that's not making it to the follow list. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam here called Click Sales Summer, which just is a low effort single screen Unity game, which looks not interesting at all. And then they just threw in I don't even know if you really would call this an anime girl, an animated girl, to say the least, in bikini, for no reason. 79 cents, bunch of languages it claims to be. It's from the same bundler who's selling several other games, like for major amounts. This is the thing in particular that they were trying to crack down on, and they clearly have not figured it out at all as far as how to crack down on abusive bundles. I don't even know what the bundles really get you, other than it potentially, I guess, might be a way of raising your numbers in an unfair way, making it feel like you making it feel like you have more fans of your games than you really do, because you're convincing people to buy these super cheap bundles. But honestly, I don't know what that really changes, unless it just manipulates the Steam algorithm. I feel like Steam's algorithm is pretty much non-existent, though. I don't know if their recommendation algorithm can do much of anything, right? So manipulating it seems almost pointless. Next, we have a game on Steam called Industrial Firefighters, which I could see a kid being interested in firefighting, playing a game like this. But I'm not sure that there's really a game here so much as far as just maybe some assets being flipped. $15.29, English and German for full audio. 7 usable vehicles, 1,000 burnable objects. See, like, Steam's algorithm is the recommended more like this games here. And is this game relevant to you here? And that's it, as far as looking at any specific games page. On the main page, you get some things that feel like they might be algorithmic, but I'm not sure they really are at all. Do that. Do that. Go ahead and do that also. Next we have a game called Override 2 Super Mech League, which is already mixed. The idea of super robots fighting is interesting. I think you probably dropped the ball by calling them super mechs, though. I've never heard of Japanese people calling a mech super. Here you have a character that looks half Iron Man and half Ultraman. That's who I was thinking it was Ultraman. But Ultraman usually doesn't have so much robotic armor. Or at least I never felt like he was wearing robotic Iron Man style armor. That certainly would have gotten an audience. There's more of these screenshots would show. So they must have really dropped the ball. Let's see. Go play this. And then rush there. And then do that. And then attack there. Yeah, this must just play terribly. Because visually, it doesn't look bad. It seems to have several Japanese-centric robots. Which would be interesting. It's $26.99, which speaks to a level of quality that you should expect. Let's see what the reviews say. Let's see. Played for an hour. In that time, made many attempts to find other players online to fight against and found no one. Finally, after 70 minutes, I finally got paired up against another real player, and the online connection was so laggy and the match was impossible to play. Override 2 was my hope to finally getting a player base that Override never had. However, it appears the same lack of marketing is taking place. You know, there is something to be said about this, that you have a game that you assume legally licensed Ultraman and at least the Metabots character. I also saw him, the Metabots robot. No, I guess maybe that's not the Metabots robot. Maybe these are all unique new characters. But they did license Ultraman. That's saying something. And yet there's been no advertisement for this game at all. See, I thought that was the Metabots robot, but I guess it isn't. Oh, I think his name was Bumblebee or something in the English translation. Yeah, well, that's a shame, but also I'm not going to be super upset about the fact that I haven't heard of a game that they didn't advertise enough that needs other players to even have a chance of being good. So we got all the missions done except for a runecraft and portalcraft. So let's try a runecraft deck just to keep things interesting. Let's see. Tech Raptor has a review here for the game Haven. This was the two characters that were in love and kind of in part were in RPG fights in the game, but in part were also just kind of making out and dating each other on this planet. And the theory, I assume, is that they have the whole planet to themselves. So yeah, you have steamy scenes like this that make it look like an adult visual novel, and then you have like actual RPG games. It feels very weirdly mixed and matched. And here you have them in their underwear kissing in the sunset. So Tech Raptor has given a 6.0. Haven is a game set on a beautiful world with a lovable protagonist and compelling villains, but it suffers from frustrating design issues, and the game ends on a flat note. The pros are the lovable protagonist and compelling villains, the simple yet engaging combat system, and the phenomenal world-class soundtrack. What does world-class soundtrack really mean? Isn't all soundtracks world-class? I guess maybe not. You could get a soundtrack that was only good for one region, but I feel like that's unlikely to ever actually happen. The cons are the villains are ultimately wasted, key concepts are not always explained well, and there's absolutely no absolute camera controls. See, I don't know why you would go this route in particular. If you were gonna make an RPG game about two characters, then why do the flat? Why make it look like a flat visual novel? That's the questionable part about it. Why not just have conversations happen as the two 3D model characters are walking through a field or something? Like, yeah, why not have all the romance and the dialogue happen as these characters are like walking, and just have it happen in lulls of action, or have a cutscene kind of like this. Why come to this flat 2D image and have the conversation there? Seems almost like they started with a visual novel and then they got more budget and made something different with that extra budget. Let's see.
Maybe, just maybe, this magic will help.
Dancing in circles and circles!
Do we want to kill this?
How about this spell?
That. See, that certainly paints you in a weird position because, or paints me in a weird position because I kind of feel like I would want to still play Haven, but I feel like I'm probably just being suckered in by the romance aspect. That's probably nothing. Let's see, here's a video showing off their combat where they basically take turns and you call out an attack, and they're basically floating on the ground, which I imagine this was a very good cost saver to have the characters float on the ground and not have any grass elements or anything. And then you've got blasts of energy happen whenever they attack, so it's not animating direct hits. Let's see. Deal damage, draw one card. Deal 2 damage. Draw a card. guess there's not much to say about Haven. I would like to hear some other reviews of Haven, but I don't. I bet I don't. I bet it slips right through the cracks of the Christmas holiday. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Christmas Adventures: A Winter's Night Dream, which is just a Christmas hidden object game. Which, if you were going to play a Christmas themed game, a Christmas hidden object game is not a terrible thought, because you probably would only play a hidden object game once anyways. $4.24. Apparently this is bundled with something else that I had already bought. A Christmas Adventure Candy Storm, which I guess I had bought that at some point. That was probably a couple of years ago when I tried to have a Christmas themed month. That failed fairly badly, because there just aren't good Christmas games out there. This is English and Russian, which is also suspect. 79 cents for Christmas Adventure Candy Storm, $4.24 for this one, so that's pretty pricey. I don't think I paid 79 cents for the original game. Libretto has a coming soon for this device. Their device is running on something called Open Dingus X, and it looks like a tiny little Nintendo Switch with the button layouts, but a square screen. One assumes it's a touch screen. So if this gets ported, I imagine a device like this could do a lot of things, but it probably would start to struggle when you're talking Nintendo 64 games. I don't imagine it's going to have any kind of magical extra power that would allow it to bring about any high level quality emulation.
This match is mine.
That.
We'll make it next time.
Let's see. Here's the emulator cores they're planning on supporting, which, looking these over, yeah, you're not seeing Nintendo 64 emulation here at all, unless Vice X64 is Nintendo 64, which I doubt it is. I don't see PlayStation emulation at all either, nor am I seeing MAME, which means just general arcade machines aren't going to be supported. So this almost certainly is one of these devices, of which there's a lot and there's always more coming out, that you probably shouldn't buy. It's just not a good investment. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam, 600 Seconds, The Deep Church. Actually, you have an anime girl here. Let's see. Anime girl, running and shooting. This almost feels like a speedrun game of playing like Resident Evil 4, or a game like Resident Evil 4 once you'd gotten the second playthrough unlocked and unlocked the upgraded guns, and it was all action at that point. There might be something here, although in all fairness there might be nothing here, because it seems like it is trying to steal a lot of concepts from a lot of games. Apparently she's dreaming, she's just running all over the place. There is something I think fairly funny of having a giant backpack on your back and having to run through a dream. And I guess if that's the story you want to have, that there's a time limit. If anything, I'd say compare this to like Yandere Simulator, where Yandere Dave has put out like 2 announcements, and I haven't listened to any of them yet. But I imagine it's just more hogwash to stretch people along for another year. But yeah, comparing this to the Yandere Simulator, this, for a very weird niche game, looks more polished and further along than that. This is $9.59, English, Chinese, Japanese, and traditional Chinese. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. It's probably nothing, I would guess. Almost certainly it's nothing, but weirdly has more visual polish than you'd expect. Of course, it is also still very weird to release a game on so close to Christmas. Let's see. Next, we have a game called Hell's High Harmonizers, which looks like it's a black and white game. It says it's a simulation of life in hell. This doesn't look very hellish. Yeah, I don't see anything here that looks that interesting. Early access for $14.99, which is way too expensive. Yeah, I'm have to say no to this one. Man, my stomach is growling like crazy. And I don't even know what I would have done to upset it lately. Not that it seems to ever really need a reason. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Mag Vigor, which looks like it's a World of Warcraft style clone. And a whole bunch of videos here that all seem to be kind of the same thing. They're calling it an arena shooter and third-person shooter. $13.49 English and Russian. I don't see the shooter part here. Doesn't seem like it's a shooter at all. It seems like it's a hack and slash game. But yeah, the idea of playing as a monstrous demon face character is not a terrible thought. It's just all this stuff, all this UI mess. That's a problem. Next we have a Gematsu article here. Werewolf the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest is coming to the Switch on January 7th in 2021. Okay. This was, I think, mostly a text-based game, if I recall correctly. Deal 1 boost. 1 damage to somebody. And then do... guess this. See, next we have a game on Steam called Botvinnik Chess Opening Traps, which seems like an educational game around chess, but it looks badly animated. It might also be that this is more of a troll game, a joke game. This is referencing Queen's Gambit, which I feel like any game that's referencing a TV show or current events needs to probably get some second looks as far as Steam is concerned. Here you can also see this is like the third game with basically the same concept. So you can't even learn chess unless you buy the whole bundle. Yeah. Nothing impressive there. Let's go back to Portal Craft and see if we can get one more victory. TechRaptor has this article. A Nintendo leak reveals extreme measures taken to track hackers. Let's see. Among other things, the company conducted surveillance on Nimod, a hacker who cracked the 3DS in 2013. Online Nintendo historian Forced Evolution collaborates this with internal documents showing findings about Nimod's personal life, including where he lived and his average work week. So they basically spied on him. A corporation basically spied on a person, and they are probably going to mostly get away with it. Which, if there was ever an argument to break up large corporations, this is a great argument. And if anything, I guess Nintendo, particularly as a company, is a prime example of the nefariousness of large corporations. Because they're not the mustache twirling evil bad guy. They're not the Jeff Bezos that everybody points to. They can just lie low and do some nasty stuff and not get caught until way later. And if Nintendo's doing things like this, you definitely know other people are doing things like this. I feel like I'd probably get really, really frustrated if I read this article any further, but I will leave this article for you to read if you're interested. But yeah, spying on people that you think are hackers. If you think a hacker is a hacker, then turn over the evidence to the police and hope the police do something about it. And oddly, in the flippantness on how the police enforce the law, or how the prosecuting office enforces the law, ironically, I think they probably would try and prosecute hackers way more than they try to enforce a lot of other laws, more violent actions. Honestly, there should be major focus on prosecution of violent actions and then misdemeaning or decriminalizing nonviolent actions. Let's see. Let's do that. Here we have a game on Steam called The Haunting, which it's this. Let's come back to this. It's like this interesting visual effect over a kind of grudge Japanese ghost style character, and you're taking pictures kind of like it's Fatal Frame, but it doesn't seem like you're doing much other because while Fatal Frame didn't have the ghost camera concept, you weren't just wandering around the forest taking pictures of the same ghost over and over again. There were multiple ghosts, and it was more of a linear story, is my understanding. And you look at these other screenshots, and they seem to kind of imply there's really only 2 ghosts in the entire game. Let's see. Blue Box Game Studio. Early access, 1999, English full audio. Want to know what Blue Box has made otherwise, because that might like drastically affect my decision there. But I think it's probably going to go to the follow list. So Blue Box Game Studio has no other games under their name title. So I guess you put a game like this on the follow list, and we'll just see. Yeah, we will just see whether this can get polished enough to be a full game, or whether it's just the general idea. Honestly, the concept of Fatal Frame needs more polish for a Western audience anyways. Just walking around and occasionally being able to take photos of a ghost is not enough. There needs to be like smaller demon-like characters that you can shoot or punch or something, or more collectibles, or maybe some parkour or platforming, something to change things up. Okay, well.
The light will find you.
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. Fatal Fury First Contact is now available for Switch. This seems to be a weird Fatal Fury game from the looks of it. Like is it a really old Pocket Neo Geo game? Apparently it is. Neo Geo Pocket game. So you're gonna have like most of your screen taken up by this. You could have definitely zoomed in more for a game like this. Once again, lost. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Fun Christmas Santa VR, which is a terrible name, although it doesn't look terrible as far as a VR game where you might do some Santa things. But then there's a problem here in that it goes from being a fun romp in Santa, and then you have Santa in a cage and maybe a giant bird guarding him, which that takes a dark twist certainly, and I don't think you'd want kids to see that dark twist, so you've lost your audience. $8.99 English only. That's not making it to the fall list. Boken Game Studios' debut action-adventure game is a horror-themed game, but it is not hardcore horror. Boken is several people that I think worked for Capcom, 3 people that left and formed a new studio, and now they are announcing their new thing, which that really just goes to show the Japanese style of making announcements for announcements for announcements, because they literally could have announced a new studio and the game's title or the general theme around their new game on the same day, same announcement. Looking at this, you have something that does look fairly horrific. Boken Game Studio was recently established by Silent Hill, Siren, and Gravity Rush creator. An action game that will appeal to fans of his previous work. His focus will be on making this a broader experience rather than a hardcore horror game, which in all fairness, what he means by that is not make something like Silent Hill that would scare away a bunch of people who would just never play a horror game. Although with that imagery that they're using, that imagery alone would scare away a lot of fans, a lot of people who are thinking about playing a game like that. Speaking of games whose visuals might scare away a lot of audience, here we have a game called Estigma Steam Edition. They're calling it Keyboard plus Pac-Man, but with a surreal horror aesthetic. In a funny way, that does sound intriguing. I would have called this more of a Binding of Isaac game, but it is Pac-Man, isn't it? You're having to fill in the whole field while avoiding being hit. That's weird. That's weird. It's English only. It's got 19 achievements. It's free. I think this is a yes. I think this goes on the wish list. I mean, I could put it on the fall list, but it's already on the wish list at this point. Unless this is just an awful game for free, I think that would be something I might play if I have nothing better to do with my time and don't have any games to talk about, or any paid games to talk about. Here we can see IGN has that same article. Silent Hill and Gravity Rush creators' new project will be a horror action adventure game aiming for 2023. Action adventure game makes it kind of feel like like Resident Evil style game. We can also see IGN is a website I have not visited before because I haven't bothered to take out any of the annoying content.
May the forest be at
So I'll leave that page open to work on that later. Next we have a game called Ruby Kingdom, which, yeah, it doesn't look like anything. Looks like it's a board game very poorly ported to a PC game. Early access $3.59. I don't know why I opened so many bad games. I could have curated a little bit and had a shorter stream. Here we have a game called Tinny Brace, which looks like a frustration platformer. Quite a few of those today. $10.79 English. That's way too overpriced.
let's play. Let's play. Let's play.
Okay, I can see the beginning of the end now. Next we have a game on Steam here called Autharion Project, which once again looks like a Diablo clone. Seems like they almost directly stole the imagery from Diablo, but I think this actually is new or different imagery and not from Diablo. It's just a general concept. But I wouldn't really say the Diablo art aesthetic or its UI was great. It really needs an overhaul and shouldn't be recreated
Abandon me.
faithfully.
Let's play. Help me, fairies.
Stop it! Stop it!
There is something to be said about this plus sign. That looks very Diablo-esque too. Feels like if they didn't steal the art from Diablo, they definitely
My blade in
copied and traced over some stuff. $13.99 English and French. I'm gonna put it on the follow list. I already have. Interesting. But you can see it's mostly positive, so that's a decent argument for it. Although, if it came out overwhelmingly positive and people were all talking about it, but it was still a Diablo game, I would be hesitant, to say the least, to think about playing a game like that.
You're done for. Let's welcome our friend. You can't escape us. 'Tis natural for leaves to fall.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Ward Cascade, where the wards fall down. It's not a bad idea. It is mostly just a single screen game though.
Going home now.
$4.99. How many puzzles are there? English and French. I don't know. Like, I like this concept, but that's a fairly expensive price. And this would be one of these games where I kind of could only spotlight it, and then I would never get around to playing it again if I was to do that. But I'll give it a follow just to think about this general concept of games. Let's see. That,
Let's play.
and that,
Let's play.
and then that,
Let's play.
then in the turn. Next we have a game on Steam here called Phoenix Squadron North Star. This looks like a dogfighting flying game. Visually, it looks nice from the outside. So maybe you just control it from the outside, which means you can never really see where you're going. Yeah. I don't think that's the right camera angle. Although it's hard to figure out what the right camera angle for a dogfighting game anyways is, as far as aerial combat dogfighting. It's weird to say dogfighting game and not think like Michael Vick or something of having actual dogs fight each other. Which I assume that probably still wouldn't fly if somebody was to jokingly try and make something like that. Alright, well, one. Didn't hit that. That was a mistake. I wanted to hit this first. But whatever.
Stop it.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Dark Fantasy Warriors, which looks like it's a Dark Souls type clone game. Doesn't look terribly animated though. It's a low effort logo here and a low effort title. It's $1.49. Yeah, that price just eliminates it from consideration, because that tells me there's probably only like an hour worth of content at most. See, now I'm gonna get wrecked.
Whoa, you're strong.
Whenever I see these beetles, that's when I know I'm about to lose. So we need to go a little bit longer. We need to look at the sales, I think. Here we have a game called Kids Memory Game. I don't know if you need a specifically kids-focused memory game. And that does, I guess, imply that there won't be anime girls on your memory cards, but that's about all it could imply. $50, no, 59 cents. Wow, that's a big misspeak. Yeah, I couldn't justify even buying it for 59 cents though. See, I don't know why I'm losing connection. That's taking me all the way back to the beginning. That's the weird part. Usually it doesn't lose a connection like that. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called I Caramba. Solve these colorful, soothing puzzles while listening to relaxing music. Is that the new advertisement? Is that they're trying to get you to sort by shades
Time for me to
and
prove
fill in a
myself.
puzzle?
My wind is the will of the forest.
I don't think there's enough here for a game to really justify even $2.69. English and Russian languages supported. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Tencent has officially acquired Splash Damage parent Liu for a $1.5 billion deal. I think MGM also, this is not video game related, but I think MGM has put themselves up for sale for like $5 billion, which means MGM is struggling. Next we have a game on Steam here called Thyra Adventure, which feels kind of like a student project, but it looks somewhat polished. But you're not at the right scale for a game like this. It's just a lot of empty space because you're zoomed out too much. It's early access for $4.19. And yeah, I don't think there's any reason to put it on the fall list. And maybe if it comes out of early access, I'll look at it then. It almost feels like a attempt to do a modern version of something like Ghouls and Goblins or Prince of Persia. Next we have a game on Steam here called No Place Like Home, which seems to be a bit more of a cartoony survival game. Seems like there's a lot of trash that you can collect, and then some farming, and some crafting and building, and then playing Stardew Valley, and then going through an apocalypse. It's an interesting concept, but I feel like it would just turn into a farming simulator game like Stardew Valley.
Stay away.
So yeah, No Place Like Home is early access for $4.99 English only. They've got a roadmap that's seemingly a real roadmap. Seems like they also are trying to do a Kickstarter. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but I wouldn't be surprised if this game doesn't finish its development ever, or doesn't do it until several years from now. Already talked about that. IGN. I don't know who I was following that I kept seeing these IGN articles. Psychonauts 2 has some new artwork in an interview with Tim Schafer. So yeah, they're still teasing Psychonauts 2, but there's no real progress clearly being announced or shown. Feels like that game is getting further and further away from being released, not closer to the being released.
Let's play. Yeah. Stay away.
TechRaptor has an article here. Bitbox is closing down Life is Feudal MMO due to the publisher Exola not paying them, which I imagine this is often the case, is that publishers just don't pay. They don't pay the right amount. Publishers often have these horrible contracts where they have to recoup all of their expenses before they even pay you a small bit of profits, which over leverages, to use a technical term, the developers, and puts them in desperate positions where they have to then try and figure out how they feed themselves, how they can fund the development of the next game while the first one is taking its time.
Away.
Let's go and play that.
Let's play.
See. Well, I guess you could read this article, but at the core of it, also, yeah, we kind of know publishers and people don't pay quite often. And we kind of know that Life is Feudal is not a game that was super popular. Not popular enough to obviously create such an immense of situation that where shutting down would not make sense. So I've just got to end a turn here. Wait for that to go away. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Rick Henderson, which looks like it's a side-scrolling shooter. Might call it a bullet hell shooter, although by the modern standards it really isn't. They're calling it a shoot 'em up, but then it's a side-scroller. Is that the right way to describe things? Maybe it is. $7.99 English only. Not my type of game, so that's easily dismissed. Drinkbox Games is hiring for a senior programmer and game tester. We had already talked about this. It's weird, though, for them to be announcing job listings so close to Christmas. It's like, on one hand, yeah, there might be a scenario where somebody needs a job ASAP at any point in time, but on the other hand, it seems almost a certainty that nobody would be around to interview people and hire people. So even if they are just doing all over the phone, like remote interviews, it seems unlikely that these job listings would be filled in the next week. So putting them out just a few days before Christmas doesn't make sense.
You're strong.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Battle Metal, which is some kind of mech game that looks completely unpolished. It's $14.99 English only. That's going to be a no for me. Let's see. Tech Raptor has this odd article here. 1 in 10 young gamers are in debt because of loot boxes. Now, arguably, children can't be in debt, but their parents might be in debt, and maybe they owe their parents some money, or their parents say they owe them some money.
Time for me to prove myself.
But it definitely highlights the problems of loot boxes and the problems of how undeveloped brains of children, or even adults that have underdeveloped brains, should not be allowed to so easily be put in positions where they are effectively gambling and not realizing it. I'm so glad that I don't have any of the itches or whims to buy loot boxes. Otherwise, I probably would spend like $600 a month on Destiny Child for no good reason. But yeah, as much as I might like to browse slick deals and do shopping, I tend to want something physical that I can hold on to, not just pointless in-game cosmetics. It is also, I guess, worth mentioning too that I'm so flippant between games that it would be really ridiculous to buy too much in-game content, because I'd stop playing the game eventually. And that's why I'm not getting the battle pass for this, and why I don't buy packs. This is another one of these articles that would probably piss me off if I read it, so I'm just gonna leave it here for people to read, and you can go to Tech Raptor yourself and read it if you're interested.
May the forest be at peace. Help me, fairies. Hey, let's play.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Shooting Star, which action type game is what it's being labeled. Although I don't think that means typing. I think that it means that you've mixed the concept of a beat 'em up and a shooter together and made a ugly looking kind of asset flippy game. Yep. $9.99, English only. I'm not saying anything here interesting. But that and that.
Help me, fairies. Help me, fairies.
Let's see, Gamma Sutra has an article, Best of 2020, Alyssa's McAllen's top six games. So this is whoever Alexa McAloon is. This is probably a lot of Gamma Sutra listings of people's top games. If Giant Bomb was doing their Game of the Year stuff in December like they usually have, then I'd probably be listening to their deliberations. Although, frankly, their Game of the Year stuff is pretty pointless. And not particularly great in the past couple of years. Just listening to a 3 to 4 hour podcast of people arguing over things is kind of pointless. Of course, the Game of the Year stuff has always been kind of pointless. Games are very different. And you're really comparing apples to oranges most of the time.
Not one for pranks. Hey, let's play. Help me, fairies.
Check Raptor has an article here. The 5 worst Christmas games you've never heard of or tried. Adolescent Santa Claus here is a short, I believe, kinetic visual novel where you have this character that is supposed to represent Santa Claus, this anime girl. Um, it's not written well. It doesn't have branching paths. Here we have a game of Turkey of Christmas Past. Haven't heard of that one. Xmas Lamers. Never heard of that. A game called Alfred's. They're digging deep into what look like just Christmas mods of other games. And then 3D Xmas Adventure Santa's Rescue. So they have like 3 really old games that they had to dig super deep to find. One game that's about a turkey, so it doesn't even seem to be Christmas themed, really. And then Adolescent Santa Claus, which is the only recent game in the whole list. And I feel like they probably just wanted to mention Adolescent Santa Claus and stretched it into a list of 5. TechRaptor has an article here. MeatMax gives away a free Reindeer Games digital board game. So apparently you get it here at the link, not on Steam. It probably isn't much as far as game.
I did it! I won!
They weren't really showing any images there. And my head is spinning. Like my sleep schedule's still all over the place, and I'm fairly tired. Next we have a game on Steam here called Divide and Conquer, which looks like some kind of board game that I don't recognize. But yeah. Seems like it's some kind of variation of Reversi or Othello.
Time for me to prove myself!
Is fighting and despair all you know?
$2.99 English only. I'll put this on the follow list because this does look like a custom enough weird game that it might actually have some fandom behind it. And it's visually polished nicely. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Warring States, which seems like it's a board game, probably a Chinese board game. I don't know how this really plays though. It's an online social game about war, teamwork, and deception for 2 to 4 players, which means I can never play it. And to get the host edition, you have to pay $15.99. It's English only, which why are you making a game about the Chinese warring states and then making it English only? See, next we have a game on Steam here called Welcome to Imba, which looks like it might just be an infinite runner platforming game with some form of like visual novel stories too. Well, this is crazy artwork, but it's also weirdly different. And different sometimes is good. English and Russian. I'm gonna put this on the follow list because I'd like to see some reviews on this. But I bet there's not really a lot of game here. If that's what they're showing. See, next we have a game on Steam called Sayonara Electric, which would be Goodbye Electric. And this feels like a Chinese game because there's just images of backgrounds. And this animation style definitely feels different. Interactive adventure visual novel depicting life on a lunar base. All the texts are performed by Japanese voice actors. On a wall-mounted electric calendar, important is flickering. What's my plan today? Today is Christmas Eve. $8.99 English, Japanese, full audio. This is probably nothing. But maybe you'll get some reviews. I'll be generous. have about 5 tabs, but then we have the whole Steam sale to deal with. Also, TechRaptor has an article here. 5 million people played Among Us last month. Which, okay. Among Us is popular, we knew that. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Raw Fury releases its publishing agreement to mixed reactions. Indie publisher Raw Fury has released the contract it uses as its base for developers if they sign if they want to publish their games. The contract has received mixed reactions, with some pointing out potential issues and discrepancies in the language and terms, which inherently, I guess that is the danger of announcing or putting out your contracts. But in a weird way, that might also help people point their lawyers directly into paragraphs that would be a concern to write better contracts. So the idea of a potential open to the public to see or even open source contract might work very well. So if you want to read a contract, there's a link here. But yeah, I don't know. And we see these pictures of characters from, I assume, Raw Fury published games. But I don't really recognize any of these games at all. So that seems kind of weird too. So they must not be that well known of a publisher. See if I do this, I can't do anything. So you want to play this. You want to do this. You want to do this. Alright. Next, we have a game on Steam called Battle Bears -1. Just looks like an asset flip game. Uninteresting. $2.99 English only. And then let's see what else.
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
Komatsu has an article here. A post-apocalyptic water world online adventure game called Age of Water has been announced for PC, which just looks a lot like Submerged, but better done. But if it's going to be an online adventure game, that also makes a problem, because that's just not going to be a consistent experience in an online game. And it does kind of feel like it is sort of just a Raft clone, except for it's more in like the Waterworld universe where there's more adults. Honestly, this feels like this might be a licensed game. Is this Age of Water? It almost feels like it would be licensed to the Waterworld movie, which that would be weird, certainly. And then they're promising a lot with those visuals, but will they actually do better than Raft has done?
This evergreen sword will cut through their ranks.
Let's see.
You're done for.
I will protect the peace of the forest.
For the queen.
That.
And that concludes today's
And
survey.
do that. And then Gamatsu finally has this article. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection has 10 minutes of gameplay. They want to show you. And there you have someone in a weird outfit. So yeah, you can see the actual gameplay, which I do have some interest about, like how easy is it really to play Ghosts and Goblins. And it kind of feels like, looking at this, that it's still the same slight challenge it has always been, where you have to get really good at this type of game to succeed. You're not going to just be able to stumble through it unless they change how much damage you can take and just let you continue at any position you care to continue at. That might be the case.
Good to see you, my dear fairies.
And that. Yeah, I still feel like Ghosts and Goblins is needs work in its gameplay style. I just don't think that concept of a game ever really works. And then I can look at the Humble Bundle, but almost certainly there is nothing new for the Humble Bundle store. And we'll almost certainly not get any new Humble Bundles until after New Year. Alright, so then that should bring us to Steam. How can we do this? Let's see. This.
Not one for pranks.
4 damage. Then this.
It won't be long now.
For 3 damage.
Bad people are evil. Stay away.
2 of these.
Let's play. Let's play.
So the Steam Winter Sale has come, and that this was my thought, is that it was going to just happen over the time of Christmas and New Year's, and there wasn't going to be probably much of a sale. They're highlighting here Borderlands 3 for $20. That's probably not the entire game, though, with all the deluxe edition. The Outer Worlds for $29.99, and Destiny 2, which is free. The Steam Awards are something that's happening, so we'll open that tab. Let's see what games are being highlighted for what price. I thought I had bought Dragon Ball Fighters. This is not Dragon Ball Fighters, though. This is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. That's why it's still on the wish list. Raft. Raft is a game that I would like to play, but I'm not sure how much experience you really are going to have. I'd like to play the Star Wars game, which has basically come and been forgotten. Right. Do that.
There you are, my little trespasser.
And then that, and that. Go ahead and play that.
Let's play.
They've redone their whole website, as it were, and a lot of things being highlighted. This would be an interesting experiment. It'd be almost funny if it turns out all the Steam sales are experiments on redoing their website. Now they have by genre or theme, and there's a special art here for visual novels, mystery detectives, anime, strategy, casual. Is that specifically because these are very popular categories, or is that because these are categories I've looked at? Adventure, action, racing games, controller friendly, and horror games. Playing Virtue's Last Reward recently probably did make them think I love visual novels and anime games more than I actually play them. LGBTQ plus being highlighted with a animated character also. And software is just a shark. Interesting choice there. Players like you apparently liked these games. This is not a bad deal. Guacamelee 2. Little Nightmares for $3.99. Quantum Break for $9.99. Hitman 2. Not really showing a price. Then you have things that are just like 50% off for $20. That's not a good deal. We Happy Few at $8.99 is probably still not a good deal. That's not that good of a deal. I don't think I want to play any of the Disgaea games, and a digital art book is not even a game. So interesting that they're pointing out DLC. And this is a better design, though. If you want a store that keeps free festive bird stickers. If you want to keep somebody on their site, just show more pictures. Keep people's attention better instead of smaller icons. They've gotten rid of all the little small icons here. This.
To the ends of the earth.
Then
What an oath. The power of
that.
nature. More cuddles. Carried off by the wind.
This.
Breeze will guide you.
Gunfire.
And then apparently they are giving away trading cards for doing the player queue this time. So this is a big sale. So we have to go through the player queue every day for the sale. Getting trading cards to then raise up your level, which doesn't really mean anything. Digital cards, gift cards, they're promoting that. Let's see. And it's not like there's going to be a point here where they show me a game I've never seen before. Well, Dick, Dine, and Dash. A Futa Fix Dick, Dine, and Dash. So Futanari is a dick girl in Japanese games. You might call them transgendered, but I don't think that's really what it means. I don't think it's somebody who feels like they're a different gender. I think it's usually just a female who feels like a female that happens to have male genitalia and uses that in all kinds of perverted ways. And certainly in the West, that was a category for porn in the old days, but it seems to have kind of disappeared and been relabeled to something different. Slime Rancher for $5.99 is not bad. Tabletop Simulator on sale yet again for $9.99. Never get around to actually buying it. Alright, well, let's do this, 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 do this.
Are the brightest stars in the sky.
Evolve here.
This ends here. I shine, that mortals may know the way forward.
Let's see, we've got The Witcher 3 on Steam for $11.99, which I wouldn't be upset if somebody gifted me that so I could then buy the DLC. Honestly, I need the DLC. We have Danganronpa. I do want to play Danganronpa. I think I may own one already. Hades. They're kind of showing the same games over and over again here too. They're not really even deep diving. Near Automata for $19.99. Never got around to playing Code Vein. Blender is apparently free. Didn't realize Blender was free on Steam. Blender is a free software. I just didn't realize it was on Steam. And then you have Epic Character Generator, which, yeah, that's looks interesting as a software type piece. That we're getting deep into the software section. The background's not changing either. It's scrolling with you. You're not seeing a slight split or just a generic blue screen. So it would be interesting, but I can't easily turn it on to toggle the modifications I had shown a couple of streams ago to see what a white background for these listings would look like. Oh. And then there was straight up porn there, so oops on that. Let's see, what can we do? Yeah. Like that's the problem. Nobody expects to go to Steam and look at their front page and be shown straight up porn, straight up nudity, uncensored. Right, let's see what. Turn this off and reload. Yeah. And then that can bring me to my wish list. So that's the next part I want to see. So the Steam Awards, vote now. Game of the Year. Let's see what can we vote for Game of the Year. Just pick one. Hades will win, so I'll just vote because that was my nomination anyways. VR Game of the Year. The Room VR, my nomination was Half-Life Alyx, so I'll just vote there. Labor of Love, my nomination was the Time Clickers game, I believe, and that didn't happen. Among Us is kind of a labor of love. Terraria is a labor of love. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt isn't gonna win. No Man's Sky shouldn't win. Counter-Strike shouldn't win, so it's either Among Us or Terraria. I'll go with Among Us. It's not like you get anything if you vote based on who's going to win or anything. They want you to vote your conscience. I feel like knowing that Among Us has been like 2 years into development since November 16th, 2018, and just now it's getting to some coverage is fair. Fall Guys better with friends. Borderlands 3 would be also better with friends. All these games would be better with friends in general. But I'll stick with my nomination. Might as well. My nominations were fairly on the ball. But they also limited your nomination. So it's not super surprising either. I couldn't go and pick other games from older things. Subliminal. Most innovative gameplay. If Control had innovative gameplay, it should win the award, but it doesn't. Same is true for Death Stranding. Either one of those could have won the most innovative gameplay if they had gameplay, because they had so much else about their games that were innovative. Outstanding story-rich game. I think Horizon Zero Dawn would probably win that, so we'll pick that. Best game you suck out. Apex Legends, Crusaders King, Ghost Runner, esports. I'm gonna go with Ghost Runner. Outstanding visual style. Ori and the Will Wisps, Battlefield. There's No Game. Game Jam game. Avengers, Black Mesa. I think Black Mesa deserves that, if anything. That's a hard. That was a difficult choice. And then best soundtrack, Helltaker. I want to know more about that game. Halo Master Chief Collection, Doom Eternal. I feel like Halo probably deserves it just because there's going to be so much audio in the Master Chief Collection that somebody's going to have some soundtrack they like. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to them. In part because I don't really want to award anything to Persona 4 for as bad as they've been to streamers. Sit back and relax. My nomination was Flight Simulator, so I'll stick with that one. And that was all you can do as far as working towards a badge and voting. Yeah, Helltaker is on my wish list. And it's free to play, so interesting. Alright. So here we have my wish list, and we'll just do quickly a scroll down here of everything on my wish list sorted by price, which isn't 100% accurate because a lot of games list different prices. Like Lion Song Episode 1 Silence may be $3.99, but the whole game may be $20. So that they've never really been able to fix this, so it actually shows you what. And then a lot of things are just new free games anyway, so they are going to be at the bottom of the list. but what we're looking for when looking at price would be a game that is less than $2.99, at least less than $5.99. This was the KFC thing they did last year as a joke. So they went from making a joke visual novel game for free to making something in a PC that they actually sold. So you can definitely see why they wanted to one-up themselves. So they probably were thinking about making a PC the day after the game, the joke game got coverage, and was a fairly good advertising success. So we got some Space Marine DLC for $49.99, 49 cents. Some 49 cents DLC here for Castlevania Lords of Shadow. I might buy that. I'm probably not going to spend a ridiculous amount of money on this sale, but I feel like I'll probably get a few things. 49 cents for some Sudoku games. It's not a bad deal. Pretty much any of these games at 50 cents are not bad deals. You're not getting crazy there. Here we have Emma at 66 cents. That's not much of a game. It's like an hour-long video, I think, and that's pretty much it. If I was going to get any of the Space Marine or Dawn of War game DLCs, then I'd actually have to buy those games, which I haven't. Morphine for 74 cents is fine. A lot of these games are games that aren't much in the first place, so getting them cheaply, it's not a bad deal. Uno theme cards for 89 cents is a little expensive, but it's probably the best you're going to get. Normal Lost Phone, another Lost Phone for $2 is not a bad bundle. More and more, I kind of have everything, so like getting an old game like Painkiller Redemption doesn't make the most sense. Like Castle Crasher games here aren't even on sale. You want to make a point to not buy things on sale even if they are cheap. Although there are some games that literally just are never on sale. 99 cents for Aperture Tag wouldn't be a bad deal either, because definitely had some fandom there. This old game that I played when I was a kid, I have some nostalgia there. That's why it's on the wish list. It's probably not a good game by any means, or arguably not even a relevant game. Yeah. You have to be careful though when shopping, certainly, because the 99 cents can add up very quickly. You can very easily all of a sudden have an extra $50 worth of games just because you've put in 50 extra things. These DLCs that turn the Batman games black and white for 99 cents are something I probably should get. But if I click add to cart on any of this, that would be a mistake because it would take me away from this page. Still haven't gotten Nights into Dreams. I don't know if I'm going to get any visual novels after having just gotten really frustrated with a visual novel. We're getting to about $1.24 now. Let's see, is there anything majorly important that we'll see? I feel like we'll stop at $2 this time because, yeah, there's a decent number of games still on the wish list, and there's a decent number of games certainly that I still want to own, if it is just for a case of wanting to own them. Alright, Lust for Darkness at $1.50 is probably a decent price at that point. Even if I never get to play it, I could say I own it. Although at a certain point I should probably be fairly careful. Doom 64 for $1.49 is a decent price. Worms for $1.59 is a decent price. Yeah, it's kind of pointless though to buy games that you aren't going to be able to cover on YouTube. If at some point streaming just is not allowed on the internet because of internet copyright law, streaming copyright law becoming too crazy, then there's kind of a great point at that point where you could start buying more adult games, and I don't know what I would do at that point. I'd probably just play the games. I don't feel like I'd make like a WordPress site and try and write articles. That's just not me. And I don't want to try to become this text-based article writer. Although at a certain point that might be what all video game players have to do. This Underlord edition upgrade for $1.99 might be a good deal. If people started actually getting thrown into federal prison for streaming, which this is illegal streaming, not just streaming, but who determines whether it's legal or not is questionable, to say the least. There might have to be a reversion of people writing articles about video games if they want to be video game reviewers, and yeah, that would certainly suck. Perception for $2 is not terrible. Fallout 4 DLC for $2. That's mostly that's reviewed negatively. More negative Fallout 4 DLC. In a weird way, this is a relatively new game, or thought it was. It's actually 2 years old. Every sale, it's sort of the same, but it's sort of different as far as what games are on sale. You're never going to find something that's 99 cents that's this amazing game that you've just never seen before. But particularly if you've put it on the wish list yourself. But it does always seem like things change and you can find something different. Alright, so we are past the $2 mark as far as cheap games. All of those would be things I would recommend. Then if you start to look at like discounts, well, look at just like the 90% to maybe 85% games and see if there's anything that might be slightly more expensive worth mentioning but is discounted, because there is that possibility that something is fairly expensive to start with but gets discounted down to a more reasonable price. But so far I'm not seeing anything that's much different. And then it seems like more and more game developers are not willing to really discount their games 90% off. They're getting down to 85% or 75%. If they had their way, they wouldn't discount anything ever. It's also worth mentioning that now is kind of a weird time to be buying games in general or spending extra money. Little Witch Academia Chamber of Time is now rated very positively. It had some bugs last time I had heard about it, but they must have fixed that. $6.39 is a reasonable price for this game. Otherwise, it's been way overpriced at $40. Although, also, is there any real relevancy for this Netflix anime kids show game? I think Saint Seiya's Soldier Soul might be more relevant. We've got some God Eater games. We've got some dot hack games. I don't know if I could ever justify playing any dot hack. Ni no Kuni 2. That should be one. But also, look, there are details here, so I don't know if you get the full game at $9.59. And there is a possibility that once you get to the page, you find out that the actual full game is much more expensive and discounted much less, or not discounted at all. So we're hitting about 80% discount. Yeah, if I was to go really, really crazy and buy everything that was 80% off and below $2, I feel like I'd probably eliminate, I would guess somewhere around a 16th of the wish list, and that's doable. 2 sales a year, as long as the wish list doesn't grow super long every year, we could potentially have everything on my wish list in, well, 4 years. That seems reasonable. Of course, the problem there is, will I actually be able to play all the games that are on my wish list, or am I just buying things to buy things? And that is always a consideration too. So I always want to be careful around that. Here we have some Lego DLC, which that's something I'll get. But yeah, I don't particularly, even though I do shop a lot, I don't particularly buy into the idea of shopping therapy and relieving anxiety by just buying things that you don't really need. If you do find it relaxing to buy things, that's fine, but you should do the research, and you should get things you actually need, because there are definitely ways in which you can be frugal and still be a shopaholic and make out pretty decently. Check out Slick Deals. I look at Slick Deals RSS feed like 5-10 times a day minimum, and that's fine, because 99 times out of 100, if not 999 times out of 1,000, the things that are on sale are things I just don't need. I, at the moment, generally have everything I need, except for arguably the big things that everybody needs, like financial stability is something everybody could have. More cash is something people can have. Less bills is something everybody can have. Maybe a newer car, but that's about it. For me, it's like, I could buy a new surround sound amp, but I wouldn't use it. I could buy more computer equipment, and I am gonna probably buy a new computer case. But at a certain point, if I bought a whole new computer, I'm literally just building a clone of my current server for no good reason. Having 2 of the same servers in the same house is kind of ridiculous. I could buy some new TVs, but then I'd basically have to throw away some old TVs. I could buy a bunch of anime DVDs that I've never watched to increase my anime DVD collection that I've not watched, which, yeah, I've watched most of my anime DVDs, but that's about it. And the fact that I'm saying DVDs really shows how long it's been since I last bought any anime show. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd have to really dig deep to think about things I would want other than video games. Yeah, I'd have to get fairly crazy. Well, we got to 75% here, and I kept on going, so I feel like there's going to be a large contingency of games that are 75% off. And generally when you start to see 75% off, that's when they start pricing it specifically, so it's like $5, and it's not particularly an outstanding sale at that point. And if it's only 75% off, I should probably purchase it based more on the actual recognizability and desire. So having like Lucas 3 for is probably not that useful since I haven't played Lucas 1 or 2 yet. Sinner and Kagra Bon Appetit full course. I'd like to have it, but it'd be hard potentially to air that. I want the blob so I can play it. Sonic Mania, maybe I'd play, but I'm not super enthusiastic around that. But then things like Mulaka, I don't even know what this is, so why would I buy it at just 75% discount for $5 when I could get Lego Marvel Superheroes instead for $4.99, even though that I know that price is going to jump up to like $15 once you get the DLC. Psychonauts The Rhombus of Ruin is, I believe, a VR only game. Castlevania collections and old games don't make a lot of sense. Unraveled would make sense. Mirror's Edge Catalyst would make sense. A lot of these are the EA games that came back to Steam. Dragon Age, I don't know if I'd really want to play South Park. Yeah, there's a lot of games where I'm just saying I don't know. Far Cry Primal would be one I'd like. Hand of Fate 2 would be one I'd like to have. Might as well finish off the collection of Leisure Suit Larry games. Let's see. Not sure about Kerbal Space Program on the Steam account. Getting more Lego games. Always a good move. Gears 5 is mixed, so even at $10, that's a hard sell. Battlefield 1's a hard sell also. Any of the Battlefield games are Sword Art Online games. Arguably, I shouldn't have any of those on the wish list at this point. They don't have relevancy. I do want to play Darksiders 3. I don't want to pay $14.99 for it. Although it probably deserves that money. But, yeah, I don't think so. See, that gets us down to 70%, and that's a good enough point to end this stream. So, yeah, that's going to be it for the stream. Don't be surprised if today is the last stream for a while. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I skip Friday, just because that's going to be around Christmas. I might stream, I might not. I might then also not stream on Monday, but I don't see any reason really why that would happen. But yeah, if you don't hear me from the new year, Happy Christmas, Merry New Year, all of that. But I bet I will stream. Anyways, that's it. So as always, I ask that you like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.